Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Happy to Health podcast with myself, Ben Lewis, Dan Hancock and Danny Williams. Now, following the release of season 1, we got a lot of feedback on the social media episode that we recorded. A lot of people said they were engrossed by it and wondered why we cut it short. So we've listened to the feedback and we've recorded another episode on social media. So this is social media part 2. Settle down, get ready and enjoy.
Hi everyone and welcome to another episode of the Happy to Health podcast with myself, Dan Hancock, Ben Lewis and Danny Williams. Today we'd love to speak to you about social media. This is in season 2, and in season 1 we kind of opened up a can of worms and started to discuss social media, the impact that it has on our lives, the impact it has on our health, and we felt as if we were really only getting started. So we're going to take a deep dive back into this and, maybe expand on some of the points that we said in the previous episode, and also bring up some new topics because we feel like this can really benefit you guys. So Ben and Danny, thank you. Let's get stuck in.
Let's get stuck in, yeah.
Where do we start? Now, well, so we've actually listened back to this episode. It was something that we didn't know whether we were going to do because we thought, you know what, let's get this out there. This is very much been an experimental phase for us, throwing ourselves in the deep end, want to try something new, which we'll be totally transparent about. But we did decide to listen back to it, and we thought, you know what, there's actually some points in that are actually quite worrying when we think about it. And one thing that I noticed when I listened back, which I didn't bring up at the time, was, did you guys know that we might consider fake social media accounts as bot accounts? Right? But did you know that people actually have fake social media accounts to the extent that they've got 2? So one of my clients told me about this a wee while back. They've got one, which will be their, the one that they're putting out there, them going on nights out, in their favourite clothes, trying to get likes and that type of stuff. Very prim, proper, perceiving themselves in the way that they think other people will want them to be perceived. And then they've got another account, which is their fake account, which is them, being silly, being daft, being stupid, and they've only got family members on it. So they're thinking, so the whole world out there on Instagram will think that their real account is them, but that's actually the fake account. And the account when they're actually being them and being real is the hidden one, known as the fake account. And I think that's a terrifying concept.
It's quite worrying. It's an interesting point, and it's mad that we didn't even discuss this beforehand. There's people out there who have got separate accounts, private accounts, where they share their authentic self in private, and then publicly there's a version of themselves that they're portraying which they want people to see them as, and that is quite alarming. And I think to some degree as well, like especially on Instagram, we have the close friends story option, and I hold my hands up, I've got a close friend story where sometimes I'll post stuff on a close friend story to a select group of people that I would never dream of sharing on my
premium content. What sort of stuff? What sort of stuff? What sort of stuff we post?
It might be something so silly as I remember when my nephew was born, and I didn't want to share that on my main story because my sister wasn't even sure if she wanted that to be public knowledge yet. So in that sense, it could be a good tool to have. But also, there's really sketchy pictures of me on, I might be on a night out and it's blurry and I've got 2 shots in either hand. And I'm like, do I want to share that to my main page? I have a fitness profile. People might see me in a certain way. Do I want to share that? Close friends it. And when you unpack it, it actually might be a bit of a problem because I'm portraying myself as this flawless man, doesn't drink. When actually it's very normal. It's fine to have a drink. I can go out on a night out and have a couple of shots. I shouldn't be trying to hide that. And I think, as much as I'm going to confess this on a podcast, that's fine. But also millions of other people are out there doing the exact same thing, maybe to even more of a severe degree. And it could actually be negatively impacting their mental health. And they might be creating a version of themselves, a character of themselves for the public domain. And then their most truest, authentic self is deprived of that public knowledge. And it's just only kept for secret. And what kind of effect does that have on their mental health long term?
I know, it's like the digital equivalent of putting a mask on, isn't it? Or a philosophical mask or whatever way you want to call it. It's putting on a front to who they actually are. And I know we've touched on that in a couple of other episodes before about that lack of identity and putting out an identity that individual feels is the identity that other people want to see, if that makes sense. So I think what would we recommend doing for someone that's in that position? How can we get them to accept that their authentic self is the version that should be getting put out in front of the mask, or getting rid of the mask completely?
I think a big thing for me was when I was worried about what I was putting out on social media. A huge turning point for me was when I was being my authentic self versus being a version of myself that I thought people wanted to see. No matter which path I took, I still got negativity to some degree. I still got some people who didn't agree with it, didn't like it, left mean comments or mean messages. And I thought, and it sounds so simple now looking back retrospectively, but I remember thinking, well, I'd rather be myself, my authentic self, than someone can disagree with that or not like it or not engage with it. And I'll sleep better at night knowing that, rather than going through all the effort of creating a character online, being something that I thought people want to see, and then still not being liked or being hated on. And I figured that would be way more stressful, and I'd rather just be myself. Yeah. And also the reverse side of that, the flip side of the coin is when you get adulation and positive feedback for being yourself, you feel way more rewarded because you know it's because of who you are, not because of the character that you've created.
Yeah.
So even just knowing that can help a lot.
Yeah, because before we hit recording this, Danny brought up a really important point from the last episode, and it's kind of touched on there, is we were always saying just like, oh, just be yourself, and like everything will fall into place. And you know what, it might not be as simple as that, because if you do take on all of our advice, and maybe advice you've got from podcasts or books or that type of thing, and really want to, you know, really make an effort of being your true authentic self, and then all the work hasn't been done yet, and then you post, and then people initially, or your perception is that people aren't accepting you for that can open a can of worms, can't it? Because that can be like, oh, well, you know, I'm finally being myself, I'm not accepted. But I guess my advice for that would be is there's still a ton of work to be done, because if you have really, really, really worked on yourself, you won't care, like you really will not care what other people think. And the amount of time and stress and energy that you can either get rid of or get back, the amount of stress you can get rid of, or the amount of time and energy you can get back is incredible, because you're not worrying about other things. You're not putting on an act. Like so many people out there, they're basically method acting all day, putting on this front. And I know it because I did it for years. And so then once you actually then can be yourself, it's like the pressure valves are released, you can sink and you can relax. And I can guarantee if anyone is worrying about this, you're not going to bother as much about what other people are saying, because your time is now being better spent elsewhere.
Brilliant. I think as well, recognizing that other people might not be ready to accept who you are, and that's absolutely fine. It's one thing getting to a point in your life where you're comfortable in your own skin and you've discovered yourself and you know your true purpose and all that kind of stuff. That's one difficult mission. And then accepting the fact that other people might not be ready to accept that version of you, because it's so different to what they've known for so many, like you said, for so many years, you was acting like someone else essentially. Then when the penny drops and you start becoming yourself, other people might not be in a position to accept that yet. And that's okay. Don't be disheartened by that, because that's a reflection on them and their probably lack of empathy and understanding, rather than this new version of you isn't right, it's not good enough, what you're doing, go back to the old self. Yeah. So I think try not to be disheartened when, especially at the start, because it's a long process. You know, having people adjust to your new reality and your new understanding and your new hobbies and things that you like to do, and the whole journey of discovery. It's going to take, one, a long time for you to get there in the end, and two, it might take a while for your peers and people around you to recognize that you're on that journey, and it's going to obviously involve some kind of change.
Yeah, I'd just like to very quickly signpost anyone. If you haven't already, we did an absolutely incredible episode with Matt Morton, and we actually recorded it yesterday. Now, as we were releasing these, I have no idea whether you've had access to it yet or whether it's still to come. But essentially, please go and check out that episode if this is something that you're potentially struggling with. A little bit of context: Matt Morton, semi-professional footballer. He's one of the only footballers to openly come out as gay, one of 8, I think it is, which is a ridiculous
in the world
stat. In the world, which
is staggering.
He talks about this a lot. He talks about how when he eventually came out to his parents, he eventually had to just allow them to accept it in their own time. He didn't try to force it. He didn't try to put pressure on it, but he did say, look, this is me. And although that's to do with sexuality is also identity. Yeah. And if you guys are, struggling with this and trying to work that out, although again, the podcast may seem as if it's primarily about sexuality, it is about identity. And I think there's a ton of value and advice and lessons that you can get from that as well.
I think it's a really important point, and I believe we touched on it at the time with Matt. Obviously that example involved his parents, but if you look at that across a peer group and friends, you will probably lose people from your life when you start being your authentic self. And for me, I would say you would then find out who your true friends are, because the true friends that you have around you will accept who your authentic self is and love you for who you are. The people that then have an issue with it have a friendship with a version of you that isn't you, if that makes sense.
Or that you don't want to exist
or that you
anymore.
don't want to have.
Yeah.
So therefore, if you look at that in a different light, then it should be okay for you to cut them out of your life, no matter how difficult or how hard that actually is, putting it into practice. But if they don't accept you for who you are, why would you want to be friends with them anyway?
Exactly. There's a you would have heard the quote before. If nothing changes, then nothing will change.
Yeah.
And if you've gone on this bit of a journey and you're starting to realize things about yourself and pursue different things in life, and you feel yourself evolving, and then by default the people around you might accept it, they might not, and your friendships might change. And I think not being discouraged by that, and actually be encouraged to some degree, because that's a signal, that's a cue that you are evolving and you are changing, that some people around you aren't necessarily compatible with you anymore, and your the new version of yourself that you're trying to become.
I think that's really key as well, sorry mate, because if you put that cue or that signal out there, like you mentioned, Danny, there might actually be one of your friends in a similar position to you that has that fake identity that they're putting out there on show. And then if you are the one that takes that first step and says, you know what, I'm going to be myself now, this is who I am, this is what I believe in, you might actually positively impact someone that you might not have expected was in the same situation or the same shoes as yourself, and then that might encourage them to make a change too.
Yeah. And bring it back to social media as well. The thing that I think I find quite scary is, remember when obviously when the internet was born, but then also when like computers became, a lot more commonplace, and all these games were coming out, and there would be these people that everyone would think were like nerds, that type of thing. I'm not using that word in a derogatory
You just used that word.
As in, that's what people...
I was definitely that person, and now I'm a nerd. Thank you.
I call myself a geek all the time.
I'm sorry. No, that's what society's perception of them was. Society would use that word, and it was people playing these games where, they would immerse themselves in the game. They would play a character, and they would be on it for 10 hours a day, and then that became that reality. That's what social media is now. It's the exact same thing. We're playing a character. We're immersed in this game, although it's much more widespread and every single one of us is doing it, so therefore we don't realise it. Now, it's not to say that we are the nerds now. That is to say that we haven't actually... That's to say... Sorry, apart from Danny. That's to say... This is what we're doing now. We are immersed in a digital, virtual reality where we are playing a character, and we don't know how to differentiate between the two, which is confusing us and damaging our mental health. And we are then, as Ben touched on earlier, we probably prefer and seek comfort or get comfort from the virtual version because it's bigged up and it's the person that we idolize. So therefore then when it comes back down to reality, boom, we're falling down, and now we're the person, therefore we don't like ourselves. And this is how social media is crippling people's mental health.
So how do we get, it's a deep question, but how do we get people, including ourselves, to a point where we appreciate and love who we are in the real world versus this virtual world where we can be anything we want with endless possibilities? Because it's so easy to look at ourselves in a mirror and look at the flaws, look at the things that are wrong, quote unquote, with us, and then go, well, why would I accept this person and be this person when all I've got to do is put on a virtual VR headset or go on social media or whatever it might be, whatever that medium looks like, and be the perfect self? How do we get to a point where we appreciate and love everything about us in the real world versus the virtual world?
Wow, very, very deep.
Ben?
Very deep.
There's going to be a part 3 to this podcast. It's going to be everything
just covering that question.
We'll just do a social media episode every series.
But sorry, just to interrupt you before you answer, because it's so tempting, isn't it? It's so tempting because it's right there. All we've got to do is, I can be whatever I want right now. And it's that versus the waking up every day and choosing to be present, choosing to immerse ourselves in our work, in our relationships, in who we are as a person in the real life, which can be a bit longer and a bit more difficult.
Yeah, I mean, so I think I would say we talk about it a lot. Boundaries, right? It's setting boundaries. Normally we talk about it in the sense of having our own boundaries so other people don't encroach on that. But why don't we set boundaries for ourselves that we don't surpass, if that makes sense? So if you take the example of mums and dads out there, or anyone looking after children in whatever setting, parental controls are big on iPhones, iPads. You'll look at a child and go, I don't want them spending too long on an iPad. I don't want them scrolling through TikTok.
Why are we different? Why should we be different?
Why are we different?
Yeah.
Why are we different? If you recognise that as an adult, that children shouldn't be spending too long on these digital devices, why are we accepting that for ourselves? So should there be an adult control? I don't know where I'm going with this, but I think if we accept and recognise that it's damaging for children to spend hours on end on these devices, why are we accepting that and settling that for ourselves?
Yeah. And it has to come from self-awareness, and it has to come from looking inwards, because so actually when Danny said that was quite scary, because you actually kind of almost sold that. You almost pitched the idea of, at fantasizing the digital version of yourself and actually wanting that. But then that is then based on comparison to who you are now. So if you are totally happy and comfortable with who you are now, you wouldn't be chasing that thing.
Yeah.
There's nothing out there that could be better than you. There's nothing out there that you should be striving towards, because you are enough. But it's about learning to recognize that. And again, it does come from looking inwards, and it's almost not to stereotype or to categorize, but a lot of the people doing this, it is coming from a place of pain. Me and Ben, when we traveled throughout the summer, we used to sit and watch Catfish, right? MTV show Catfish.
Great show.
And we didn't really know why we started watching it. It was on one day, we watched it and we're like, I mind this is shit hot, this is great. And but because me and Ben, being geeks over human behavioural psychology, we just nerds.
I'm joking.
Because we used to find that fascinating, human behavioural psychology. We would start to analyse the episodes and be like, oh, why did they do this? And every single person, it was coming because no one just thought, oh, my life's great, I'm going to go off and create a different one online. It's coming because they're not happy with where they're at, at that moment in time.
Yeah.
Which is, again, then it's a scary thought. So I suppose the advice is it has to be to work on yourself. Great advice for people who want to work on themselves is obviously controlling what you digest, learning about the body, learning about the mind, reading podcasts. But my biggest takeaway, and I know I'm biased, but it's got to be some form of exercise, because of the skills that you can learn, and because you can appreciate yourself. For the first time ever, for some people, you can be doing something that you didn't think you were going to be able to do, and appreciating what your mind and body can do. That appreciation will allow you to grow in confidence, start to accept yourself for who you are. Once you can accept yourself, you can potentially even start to love yourself for who you are. And then this metaverse, or this other dimension is no longer appealing. Hopefully.
No, I don't think a HIIT workout in the metaverse gives you the same buzz as the one in real life, does it?
No, not at all.
It'd probably
Unless
be so
there's
intense.
some kind of digital endorphins that you get fed, maybe not.
But that's we might as well call that medication. It's just was it Ben? Was it you that said the other day? Somebody said something. I can't remember who it was, so I apologise.
If it was me, it was probably very bright and inspiring.
Was it about? If it was Ben, it was about analytics.
I'll tell you what.
Will I get my spreadsheet out?
It was about Ben basically said it was about dogs and analytics. It was you. You said that, but actually no, you were quoting somebody else. That someone had said, why is exercise seen as alternative medicine or alternative therapy or alternative methods? Exercise and mindfulness, that should be the first thing. Then medicine and all that types of that should be the alternative.
Yeah,
it was you that said that. Wasn't
it was me that said that. I can't remember where I heard it, but yeah, that's right. It's because we'll not open this can of worms, but big pharma coming up with these medicines. Nothing against pills for treatments in any way, shape, or form, but because that has been so commercialized and so profitable for some companies, anything that goes against that, i.e. exercise, mindfulness, that's what's deemed an alternative therapy, whereas that's probably the most easily accessible. Therapy is get your body moving, get thinking, read a book. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not saying that there aren't illnesses out there that need to be treated by medicine, but it's a weird kind of paradox, I guess, that this thing that is most accessible that anyone can do is seen as the alternative method to therapy or for treatment, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Coming back to you, Danny, because we touched on this in the last episode, and you're fortunate enough, and you've got this follower base, which is absolutely incredible, and it's down to some of the amazing things that you have done. But that must be a bit of a funny world sometimes, and a bit of a scary world. Do you feel as if that there's a pressure and expectation for you to show up? Do you feel as if there's a pressure for you to post inspiring stuff? As in, do you feel that you almost like you've got a bit of a responsibility?
Yeah, keyword responsibility. And I would say the relationship with social media and myself has evolved and it's changed quite a lot. I think the number one priority for me now, with the purest intention possible, is for me to show up as myself on social media in whatever capacity that looks like. And that's not to say that I'm going to be posting me at my very worst every single time.
2 shots,
of course. but on the flip side, my number one agenda with social media is to provide value, whatever that looks like. And I feel like if I'm posting a version of myself that isn't really reflective of who I am, that's going to be a much more difficult place to give value from. And if people do find value from that place, then it's not really authentic. And then that energy is going to come back to me in a negative way someday. So, there's an element of responsibility. Like, I hate using the word influencer, but with a platform comes the potential to influence in some way. Even just like if I post a picture of like this room right now and there's bottles of water versus if there was bottles of Coke, subliminally that could influence people, as daft as that sounds. Yeah. Not to slate Coca-Cola by any means, but
I thought we had Cristiano Ronaldo in the room for a second there.
Chris over here.
But no, there's an element of responsibility, but I definitely used to feel that pressure way more, and I find it much more rewarding now, ironically, being myself, showing the cheat meal or the night out. I feel much more comfortable showing that, and I feel like the response I've gained from that is much better. And we had a conversation with Greg O'Shea, and he said when he came out of Love Island, there was a big pressure to act a certain way, to do certain deals, to behave in a certain way in the public domain. And he found very quickly when he ignored that lifestyle and he was just being his authentic self, which was health and wellness, which was rugby, which was studying law, his following went like this, boom, and plummeted. And he didn't care an ounce about that because he was being his authentic self. And now, fast forward a couple of years, he's built a community of people who know Greg for Greg and love him for who he is. And I'm on a similar path in that sense because, similar to Greg, although I didn't have as many followers as him, I've lost a following to some degree. Probably about 100,000 followers I've lost since I came out of Love Island and had that platform. But I feel way more comfortable with the platform that I've got now because they know who I am now versus back then they knew a version of me which was portrayed by a TV show which was very manipulated. Yeah. So the pressure is reduced massively. The responsibility is still there, but I'm more motivated to serve that audience now than I probably was before, because back then I was probably thinking, well, they only know the version of me that was on TV, which is just it wasn't even me to any real degree. Yeah. So where's my motivation to inspire and educate and help and provide value to? Whereas now I'm like, I've got a little family now. I've got a little family of people who care about, if I'm sick and that's on social media, they'll hope you feel better soon. Try this if you tried this. If I'm posting a recipe, I tried this. Thanks so much for sharing that. And I feel like I've got a bit of a community now, which is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, and I just want to touch on a point there as well. And I think, not that this always applies to the younger generation, but there definitely is. We brought it up in other podcasts. that there are people who are just chasing this thing, and it's not even real fame now. It's influencer fame, it's social media fame, and it's happening.
It's Z-list fame.
Yeah, and it's happening.
It's like we said it yesterday. It's not famous, it's infamous. It's the opposite. It's like fame without the perks, isn't it? It's like you don't walk into places and just get stuff given to you, or like free cab rides. It's like it's like you get spotted in the street and ask for pictures, but then like the perks aren't there as much as maybe it was back in the day.
Giggle and run away anyway. But it's a great point, because then for anyone, and it happens as early as schools now as well, it's this popularity contest. It's I watched the show the other night. It was Queer Eye, by the way. I don't know if you watched it on Netflix. Absolutely incredible. It's brilliant. And I watch it with Amy. Although I say that she made me watch it, but now I just sit and watch it on my own accord anyway.
That's how it always starts. If anyone's got a girlfriend, understands that. Like you get roped into it, and then they're getting ready, and you're just watching it off your own accord. Like, oh, this is great.
I said that the other week with all the boys in the group chat. I was talking about Desperate Housewives, and then everyone was like, "Oh, I watch it.
Everyone barred me. I watched it.
But I was watching the show, and they had like the prom king and queen, and I actually sat there for a second. I was like, why the hell do they still do that? That's actually such like a ridiculous concept that they're still doing. But anyway, I digress. The point is that Danny lost 100k followers. I think Greg said he lost 1 million, and they're the happiest they've ever been. It isn't something that you should be chasing. On that, sticking with that, Danny, we again, and to draw back to our podcast with Matt Morton, he made a really interesting point that actually I thought was really refreshing. I was really happy about, because a lot of the time when we are trying to advocate for good and we are on a mission of, to promote equality, I suppose, a lot of the time we'll then see the bad things. So I assumed that Matt was going to tell us that he probably had received quite a lot of homophobic abuse. I was sitting back and I was expecting that. But he said that he'd been called gay way more times when he was straight before he came out. He thought he was straight than he did when he did come out. And I thought that was nice, because I was just like, fucking hell, maybe it's not as bad as we think. When it comes to social media, I have a perception that the world's fucked still. I have a perception that, it's filled with hate. And again, not because I'm being doom and gloom about it, but it's because I really want to make a change, and I'm really passionate about it, and I dedicate my life to it. When it comes to your insights to social media with that larger following, what's your take on that? Is there still a lot of work to be done? Do you feel as if, what we touched on with Matt was that it's coming from a lack of education and lack of awareness? What's your take on sort of the stance of the social media mentality when it comes to being a good person?
Oh, it's a big one to unpack. And quickly, just the conversation with Matt was absolutely incredible, nothing short of inspiring. And I think a big takeaway from me, which I found resonated a lot with me and Matt, was the conversation was very positive, and it was very kind of progressive, and there was a lot of hope to kind of draw from that conversation. And you said, social media is so doom and gloom and so evil, but I think through Matt's experience, what we can learn, and also through my own experience, is that yes, there's a lot of negativity out there, and there's a lot of mean things being said out there. But what I've learned, and also what Matt clearly has learned, is a very small percentage of that negativity comes from pure evil, cold-blooded, hateful people, right? A lot of people, let's say you got a room of people, 100 of them, and they're all sending out hateful messages, right? 1 to 5 of those 100 people are just genuinely evil, bad people who cannot be helped. And I think although there's 100 bad people in the room, there's 95 people who could be educated or could be changed or helped or need therapy or whatever it might be in order to fix them on their journey and help them become a version that can be a great addition to society. And what I've learned through my social media journeys, because I started off just like you, like, all these people hate me. Oh my God. Like, what? Like, I'm getting racist abuse. I'm getting death threats. I'm getting the worst things under the sun said to me on a minutely basis at one point. Like, not even hourly, it was like a minutely basis. I'd refresh, and I'd take the refresh my message request. Hope you die. Hope your parents die. Hope get run over by a bus. Or like, cancer this, black this. And it's like, oh my God. Like, all I did was go on TV and just flirt with a few people and whatever. Like, anyway. But now I'm at a point now where it's almost like you have to show empathy and compassion. And it's difficult because they're going very much at you. And it's difficult to show compassion for people like that. But for one, I believe it's the only way to solve the deeper problems. And for two, it's kind of, it helps you on your acceptance of it as well, right? Like if you just fight fire with fire, you're going to get nowhere. You're going to feel rubbish as well. But yeah, the first thing what I realized is that if you treat it with empathy and compassion, and you start to unpack, why are they sending hateful messages to me? Like, what? Like, if you deep it, like, you know nothing about me. You just know a portrayed version of me, which deep down you know isn't the real me. And yet you have such nasty things to say about me. And Matt can relate completely because he was playing football, and someone who has no idea who he is might call him a name about his identity and his sexuality, right? There's no relationship there. What's really going on? Okay. Instead of this person just being like an evil, like, son of the devil, what might be going on is they might have experienced trauma in their life that they haven't gotten over. They might be in an unhappy relationship. They might be having a bad day at the office. They might have just, like, their car might have broken down and they're venting and a million and one of the reasons why they could be being mean to you. And I think accepting that and thinking, oh God, like, I hope you're all right, dude. Like, because if you was all right, you wouldn't be saying that to me. Treating it with that kind of empathy helped me a lot. And it didn't come straight away. Like I said before, I would just sit there and scroll and let it get me down. But yeah, the treating fire with fire and I know people who send messages back. Like, I know people who be like, you fucking what? I'll come to your house and burn your house down. And
is it Mac by any chance?
I'm not naming any names. and you realize that gets them nowhere too. In fact, it accelerates the problem and makes it much worse. And if you want to create real change in society, unfortunately, it's going to take the people on the right side of the table to take a step and be like, okay, I know you're in the wrong and I'm in the right here, but in order to fix a problem, we also need to show empathy and compassion and help them up the ladder rather than step down the ladder and kill them off and fight them off. Because I think that's, in my opinion, the only way to treat it.
Yeah, I totally agree, because it's like that saying, like, kill them with kindness in a way, do you know what I mean? Because that person saying that comment, which is awful, by the way, I'm sorry you went through that, it's ridiculous. That person probably might not even expect you to either respond or see it, which, as fucked up as that is, pardon the French, around why say it in the first place. But if they, like you said, you respond to that with that empathy, compassion, kindness, that might then set them on that journey to go, you know what, I've been a bit of a dick here. Like, I've been horrible to him and he's been really nice to me. Yeah. That might be the kind of Kickstarter that they get to go on and educate themselves, like you said. I've
got a practical tool that you can use to give that empathy as well, because although, like, what Danny shared is like absolutely incredible, it's so valuable. Sometimes, a lot of time, there's that anger that overrides us, isn't there? And there's that overwhelm of emotion. So a really good way to regulate anger in that scenario is to obviously to show empathy for the other person. But how you can do that is, this is what I found, because I used to be very angry, and there was actually a scenario quite recently where someone made me really angry. I was probably angrier because I don't experience that emotion much anymore, because I've done a lot of work on it. So it probably made it a lot worse. And it was basically questioning my business and that type of stuff, something I take very, very personally. And I was getting so riled up, and I was then, like, voice noting Ben about it. I voice noted a couple other people about it, purely for me to vent and for then to generally get their feedback as well. So I do back up in that sense why I did that. But all that happened then was I was just dwelling on it more. It meant that then 3 hours later, when they replied, that conversation was still ongoing, whereas it could have been nipped in the bud. And actually, a lot of research and studies show now that actually that venting doesn't actually work. Although in a lot of studies and things, so for example, the chimp paradox by Professor Stephen Peters says you can exercise your chimp. But if that isn't your natural go-to thing, it can make it worse. But anyway, going back to this anger regulation, what you can do is say, oh, this person may be an enemy of mine, right? They are making me angry. If I'm angry and I don't want to feel like this is going to teach me how to become compassionate and how to accept another human being for who they are. Therefore, I like them, because they are teaching me to become compassionate by having to manage my anger.
It's like they're providing a negative value almost. It's like they're giving you value in a not so ideal way, but the value's still there, so treat it with a certain level of respect. I think
So
powerful.
you then think, right, okay, they're making me angry. I don't want to feel like that. How do I continue not feeling like that? Show compassion and empathy for that individual. Okay, well, even though they're the ones that are making me angry, they're teaching me that, and I don't want to feel like that. Therefore, they're teaching me a valuable lesson. They're making me better for it. Okay, I like this person.
I think as well, accepting that, because when we're in the face of anger and someone being so categorically wrong and out of order, we forget that also we're not perfect. We've had times when we've pissed people off. we've triggered that very same emotion in someone else in our not so distant past, most likely, and we sleep every night. We don't think, oh God, I'm such a bad person. Like, so not to say we're all bad people, but what I'm saying is it's very common for us to, and quite normally in society, to say things that other people might not agree with. Obviously, death threats and that kind of stuff is categorically, it's just not okay in society. But we can be infuriated by, you support Man City, I support Man United, and you beat us 2-1, and I'm going to be really angry right now. That's very common in society. Yeah. And I think accepting that there's days when I might infuriate someone else and they can choose to behave in a certain way or whatever. And so when you're in the face of that, kind of recognizing, okay, look, he's making me mad right now, but also I've done the same to the people in the past, so just let it go. And it kind of allows you to rise above it. I don't know if that helps.
I think that kind of, that anger regulation you're talking about, I think is even more difficult, I guess, or how can we look at it? So I guess the point I'm getting at is, digitally, it's very easy for somebody to be angry and comment on things and send out messages and not see it again, where it's different because they probably wouldn't say it to your face if you were walking past them in the street. So it's that reaction that I guess what I'm getting at is you need to react in the way that they've probably already forgotten about what they've said or what they've sent, but that will be the thing that lingers in your mind for the rest of the day. As wrong of whatever message or comment that was said, they may have moved on to the next victim, if you want to call that, and message somebody else and then message somebody else. So they're not holding on to it as much as you probably are, I guess. And it's recognising that and then regulating your emotions in line.
On some of those things, sorry to bring it back to this, Danny, but I think it is a really important point. When it comes to that stuff, like that's awful stuff. I mean, like, I take it personally when someone tells me to post this shit. Like, so, for someone actually saying like really, really, like, hurtful things and like abusive things like that, it's absolutely awful. What effect did that have on you? And would you have anything to say to anyone who maybe thinks it's just a throwaway comment, or they're maybe saying something, but they think's maybe, someone might even be saying something for attention of their mates or something like that, share it in the group chat, like, oh, ha, ha, ha. They might not even mean it, and that's not to suggest that discriminating someone is a joke or that it's something that can be a little bit of banter. It's not, but a lot of people, especially younger people, see it that way. When it comes to receiving some of these comments, and some of them that may be throwaway comments, or like, what would you say? Because I mean, that must have been horrible for you.
Yeah. I guess at its peak, it really was. I'm not even going to try and shy away from it. At its peak, I was regretting everything. I was regretting going on TV. I was thinking I've made a huge mistake. Like, it was so bad where, like, my little brother and sister were getting picked on at their respective schools because there was brothers and because we was related.
It's awful. Parents
coming off social media. I would very rarely go into the public, and then when I did, there'd be like rounds on Twitter saying like, oh, just seen Danny Williams in like Westfield. Oh my God, like, we're going to go and X, Y, and Z him. Did
you become a little bit reclusive?
Oh, massively, yeah. And as well, another massive side effect was I thought everyone was doing it when actually the reality was it wasn't so many people doing it. It was of the mass. It was like high volume, but like it wasn't everyone I ever met. And I would go into meeting new people with like a passive aggressive behavior mentality, and I would just assume that everyone hated me. I would meet you guys, and even though you're great people, I would meet you and just assume that you might have one point said something nasty about me, even if it wasn't true. And that wasn't a nice place to be in, because it just meant I was always in a negative headspace, and I would just be like, I wouldn't be who I know that I am and how I was raised. I was raised as a polite young man, and always to have good manners. And I would go into like a coffee shop and just be like one word, black coffee, no sugar, and just take it and not say thanks or please or have a nice day. And that's who I am as a person. But I stopped being that person because I was just in a negative headspace the whole time.
a lot of the time people think that I'll just like try and bring a positive out of everything, and it's not that at all. And do you feel though that has benefited you in some way? If we were to try and pull a positive, not to then, I know this goes against the message because people might think, oh well, it ended up serving a lesson. Now he's fine. Okay,
yeah, I'm doing it, guys. I'm better for it now.
Yeah, I'm going to go off and tell more people that I hate them and all this type of stuff. Can you draw positives from it? Has it taught you any skills or lessons that you?
I think I have to. I think if I don't, then I don't know where I would be. To be quite honest, whether that's the right thing to do or not, I'm not sure. But I had to because I wasn't for so long. And then I found myself on a trajectory where it didn't look too good. And I was like, I don't really like where this is heading. I need to like draw some positives and try and fix this because no one's going to come and fix it for me. There's a saying, if you want to change the outer world, you need to change your inner world. And then that's how you kind of change the world. And instead of trying to go and meet every single person in the world to prove to them I'm a nice person, which is what I thought I had to do at one point, which sounds bizarre, but genuinely that's what I thought I had to do. I need to meet everyone, and then they'll see what I'm really like, and then they can stop hating me. I had to just actually look inside and change my inner world and change how I view everything. And so I guess the positive that I can draw, or there's several positives, but the biggest one is the adversity forced me to grow at a speed where I didn't think was even possible. And it brought to the very forefront the level of personal growth that, for one, I'm very lucky to have gone through, and two, I think I wouldn't have gone through unless I was at least till my 30s plus. The kind of questions that I ask myself, the kind of conversations that I have with people like yourselves, the kind of mindset and perspective I have on stuff, I feel very fortunate to think the way that I think now, and I think a huge part of that is directly because I went through a lot of shit, to be quite honest. And I read a lot about people and successful people and people that have gone on to achieve a lot of things in life. I read a lot about that kind of stuff, and the number one theme is that at some point it all went tits up. At one point they thought it was all over, and at one point they had to take loans out, and at one point there was, their partner lost their life or something so tragic, and you think, how did you pick yourself up? And quite often people owe their successes to the very thing that they thought at one point was gonna ruin it. Yeah. And I think that was a silver lining for me, was that I did get really quite low. And I imagine, or I hope, touch wood, that one day I look back and think, wow, I wouldn't be as strong as I am now if it wasn't for that. I wouldn't be as resilient now if it wasn't for that. I wouldn't be as good of a partner, as good of a brother, as good as a father if it wasn't because of the adversities that I went through at 21. So yeah, those are the positives that I can draw from it, which I think are very, maybe at one point I probably used to just tell myself these are positives, but now I do firmly believe that what I just said is true.
Yeah, it's forced evolution, isn't it?
At such a young age as well. Like we've obviously said, like you've got an older head on your shoulders, but for that to happen you at 21 is just, it's frightening. But obviously we know you quite well now, and we've seen the person you are and just how genuine and nice a guy you are. So everyone listening,
still a geek.
he's a nerd, but he's a really, really nice guy.
To start to wrap up this conversation, we've spent a lot of time talking about the damages of social media. We have kind of touched on a couple of the positives, but I would like to end this on a nice way to celebrate some of the positives. So what I would like to ask is, can you share probably one of your favourite things about social media, one of the things that is a real positive for you, and then something that you would like to see maybe in social media in the future? Something like, not necessarily, I don't mean technology wise, but what sort of place would you like social media to look like, in 5, 10, however many years?
As for all the negatives of social media, there are so many positives with social media. I think one of the most powerful things about social media is the ability for things to gain traction, and that can come with its negatives and its positives. But we've all seen stories on social media where like someone needs like a treatment, or someone needs something urgently, and the power of social media, this post gains traction very quickly, and then overnight like £1 million been raised, or someone can get like a life-changing surgery across the other side of the world. Great and I've seen time and time again, like someone are just on their last shot of hope is like, this is my daughter and she needs this thing, and it's like in India or somewhere, and it's like, if anyone could just like and share this, and it's something that we all have the access to do and the ability to do, and then before you know it, like their life's been changed. And it's like, I've seen that so many times, and it really just makes me emotional. I'm like, oh my God, that is social media being so powerful and positive. And I guess how would I want social media to look like in the future? I guess how it runs right now is very effective, just less of the negativity. And I think more specifically, the platforms and the size they're at now should be enforcing a lot more regulation. That's how I want, because I think we're very fortunate to live in a world where social media is so accessible, so powerful, so influential. But in terms of the trajectory of social media and the trajectory of the internet, it's going to be with us forever, most likely. We're still in the very first dawn of it. It's very young still. So obviously it's going to have its flaws, it's going to have its problems and its issues. But one thing I would love to see eradicated is the ability and how easy it is to send hateful messages. And it sounds obvious based off of what we've just been speaking about, but I think these platforms, they have the ability to monitor when we talk about COVID. They have the ability to monitor things when it's like nude pictures and then it gets removed very quickly, or if you copyright music. All these things seem to be monitored very, very quickly.
Yeah, the music.
Like you can't even put a non-copyright song on a video, and it's very innocent. It's just a workout video. The song's already famous, so why does it matter? But then if you abuse somebody on social media, or if you say really hateful things for some reason, or racist messages, these things aren't monitored and policed anywhere near enough as they should be. So I think that's what I want the future of social media to look like, hopefully sooner rather than later.
Yeah, love that. What about you?
I think you just stole what I was going to share. But no, just to back up what you're saying. So the positive from social media, I think, is the connectedness that we have, right? So just last week, for example, I've got family in America. My cousin reached out to me, sent me a message out the blue on Instagram just to say she'd obviously been following what we were doing with the award in mental health and exercise coaching, and just sent me a message out the blue saying, hey, not spoken a while, love what you guys are doing, keep it up, this is brilliant. I'm thinking, wow, you kind of forget like who in the world is actually seeing your stuff. So to have that connectedness with my family across an ocean in a different country is just brilliant. And then similarly, we've got friends that live abroad and being able to shoot them a message on WhatsApp, see what they're up to at the weekend in Dubai or Australia or whatever, where they live, not on holiday, but to see their lives separate to ours and the lives that we live in the country that we are. I think that connectedness is just something that is really quite special and really quite astounding. And then I think the future of social media, I fully agree with you in terms of the regulation side. Again, it comes down to, not to go back over your point, but how can some things be taken down at the push of a button or even automatically, but then there are other things that stick around for hours and hours and hours, and it's reported hundreds and hundreds and thousands of times before action is taken. Or you see things where people have posted to say that they've been catfished, somebody's replicated their stolen their pictures, created a fake profile, and then they get a message back saying, oh, this doesn't breach our community guidelines. And it's like, well, if I'm saying that person has stolen my photos and created a fake identity, a fake profile, that's not me, how can that still be accepted and not removed by the very company that hosts the pictures on that platform, if that makes sense? Yeah. So I don't think it's regulation for the sake of regulation, and we don't want red tape wrapped around everything and bureaucracy all over the place. It just needs to be done logically, I guess, and ethically. Like, how many times you've looked at stuff like that and think, oh, why is that allowed to pass? So yeah, the future for me in social media is a lot more regulation in the right places for the right reasons.
I've never understood about them, I can't do this, or we can't, like you said, monitoring the accounts or getting rid of fake accounts. Like if Mark Zuckerberg can write code to create Facebook on his on his dorm window, like how on earth can that not happen? But listen, guys, no, I have to fully agree. I think I need to echo Ben. It's this, and you as well, Dan. It's this human connection. I think is incredible, and if abused, we lose human connection. If we do it in the right way, we gain human connection, and I think that's just absolutely incredible that. You could be connected with someone and be positively impacted from someone where you otherwise may not have been because of these platforms, that you can, go and, either fall in love or, make friends or whatever it is, but be positively influenced and have a better life by meeting new and interesting people, I think is absolutely incredible. So I suppose the takeaway point is that similar thing. You know, if you use it for the right reasons, you're going to get good stuff back.
Yeah.
If you abuse it, then you know you need to pay a little bit more attention to that and how it's making you feel. So guys, really hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as we did. If you like it, then there'll maybe be a third one as well.
We could talk for hours about social media.
Definitely.
It's a big topic.
And thanks for all the insights to you guys as well.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Lads.
Well, how good was that? I really, really hope those that provided us the feedback from season 1 enjoyed the follow-up to social media in part 2. I'm fairly certain we're probably going to have a social media episode on every season we do from now on, because we can talk about it for so long. So we hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, we would like your support. Please make sure you like, share, comment, subscribe. Share the word about the Happy to Health podcast, and remember to follow us at Happy to Health on Instagram. Share it with a friend, share it with a family member, and spread the word about what we're doing. Until next time, we'll see you then.